Hey, everybody, it's Marty the JavaScript party and my buddy Rhett here. Hey, Rhett. And it is Saturday morning. It's rainy and drizzly outside. I believe it's probably around, I would guess it's probably about 45, 50 degrees Fahrenheit out there right now. So it's pretty cold. I have acclimated to the colder weather. I took the dogs out for a nice long walk this morning out into the soccer fields that are behind my house. Yeah, I got a pretty sweet setup. I don't play soccer, but I do play ultimate frisbee, and we play ultimate frisbee out there from time to time, just sort of a pickup kind of thing. But so I'm in a very interesting situation on this application right now, and it is a situation that I feel like I end up in all software development efforts, and that's where you kind of like sort of subdivide everything out and then you try to put it all together and it just doesn't work. And I don't think this is unusual. I do think it is probably the most uncomfortable part of software development for most developers is when you're trying to kind of get everything to come together. It's easy to just get really super panicked in this situation. And I think one of the things about software development is that like I think that like when you're doing things like you sort of do things consciously and then you do some things like sort of subconsciously, and sometimes you're just your instincts just take over and you're just like in full instinct mode. And I think that happens a lot in software development. And what happens is like they'll go in full instinct mode where you're just not really aware. Like I remember one time I was driving my whole family, and well, the thing as a software developer, you become very comfortable in being in instinct mode, which then can make you seem very, very distant. So you may be just standing in line somewhere or whatever, and you're just in a different place. You're not in the moment. And I do think it's not just software. It may have been something that was sort of first recognized in software developers and maybe like accountants and some other fields like that, where you just spend a lot of time what they call in your own head. But I do think it is like throughout all of society now. And it is a pleasant experience, but it's like too much of it is not good. So like one time I was driving my family in our minivan, and I was like highly aware. We were just in traffic and people were acting kind of crazy. And we were in like a 3-lane roadway that is sort of like a road that's a highway at some point, but then it becomes like a more of an urban road, and then there's like lights and stuff, and it just sort of in this transitional mode where you go from like highway and it literally just feeds straight into being in a regular road, a high speed sort of road, and then sort of kind of slows down as you get closer and closer into more urban areas. And my son-in-law, he loves to race cars. He like literally, he comes from a very affluent background, and they did like a lot of high end. Okay, for race car driving, it's low end, but for regular people, it's high end. It's the kind of thing that maybe you need to spend. It's a hobby that you need to spend like $60,000 to $100,000 a year to maintain. So like regular people just can't do it. But like for race car driving, high end is like $100 million a year. So it's very low end in race car driving, but very high end for regular people. So that was like his thing, and he would do a lot of race car driving. And so this person, we're driving along, we're probably going about 45, 50 miles an hour, minivan full of people, and this person cut straight into our lane. And I literally had been paying very close attention, and I knew that there was a car in the left lane coming up really fast, so I got into the left lane. I accelerated as fast as I could, and there was a car coming like literally like 65, 70 miles an hour straight into our back, and I managed to get in front of the car that had been in front of us, got in front of him, and then I knew that there was a gap coming, and before we hit the car that was going to be in front of us, I was able to change lanes, and I ended up being exactly in the same spot that the car that had just cut us off was, but I went all the way around. And he was just blown away. He was just like, that was one of the most impressive racing moves I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
And the fact that you just did that is just blows my mind. I did not remember any of it. like I had dropped into some other primal sort of mode and just immediately just did all these things. I didn't realize I was aware of all that information. It was just, well, I do that all the time in coding. And I was actually thinking before, like last night when I was trying to think over, like, what the F is going on here? I was like, you know what, I'm gonna spend some time tomorrow trying to fix this, and if I can't fix it, I'm just gonna go heads down off camera and figure out how to fix it. Maybe do a commit before, and then explain what I did to fix it. And then I was like, no, this is literally the whole point of this entire exercise is for me to understand what the F I've been doing for the last 30 years. Um, I just have so many gaps, and I used to have a lot more gaps and all that, and I'm just completely surrounded by people who are sort of like just drop into like a zombie mode, do their work, come out of the zombie mode. You're like, well, what does this do? They have no idea what their work does. They have no idea what they intended it to do. They're just sort of drifting along aimlessly, and it's not good for them. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for the industry. We need to have more conscious awareness of what we're doing. I think they call it, we need to be more present. We need to be more thoughtful. We need to have more awareness. So yeah, I don't know what's going on here. I know that there should be a little guy here, and he shouldn't be moving because we haven't animated him, and I think we should just be seeing the front of it. And I don't know why we're not seeing that. So let's dig in. Yesterday I figured out that the camera was sitting in the middle. And in the middle of the object. It was sitting at 0, 0, 0. So we know that you can't see things when you're at 0, 0, 0. So maybe that's the problem, but our canvas still isn't creating anything in there. Like if we look at the main one, we inspect that and we go in here. It's interesting. I'm expecting to see something in there, and I'm surprised. Like I was expecting to see like an actual like this sort of thing, an element inside of there, but I don't see one. So maybe that is interesting. So we see the overall thing. I feel like in the past I've been able to look in here, and that's like Ask AI. Okay, I do not want that. Let's see if I go here. Yeah, see, it won't let me get any lower than that. I know that in past days you could see things that were inside of here, or at least I thought I knew that. Unfortunately, you can't. So it'd be nice if we could see, like if we could see the elements inside of there. Yeah, see, this is code. But if we could see that, then we could like kind of check this guy up here and see, is there something there we just don't see it, or is there nothing there? But unfortunately we don't. So I know we did create some console logs, and I think we figured out that inside of our, see, this happens twice. We set the position. See, okay, so when we go to create, so first thing I want to do is look, okay, am I in ST world or am I in 3 world? We are in ST world. So when we go to create our camera, see, we set the camera position, and we create our camera by ID. Set position of the camera, and I'm just going to add our camera ID to this. And then look in here. I love you too, Rhett. So basically we have 2 cameras. Oh, we have 3 cameras. That's interesting. So I think what happens is we create a camera in this, but we don't use it. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know why we have 3 cameras. I hope we don't have to dig into why we have 3 cameras. What I hope happens is when we delete all the code from the app, we drop down to one camera. But this is probably hopefully something that we remember to check. But so we set camera 9. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I want to go to the renderer service. And I'm going to do this console.log. And I do this all the time professionally, like where I just have to freaking dig in and just figure out why something that should be working, that everything in my brain says should be working, isn't. And sometimes it's something silly. I would say 9 times out of 10 it's something silly, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is not something silly. Okay, render camera 8. Set position. So this, okay, so what we care about is the one, and I'm just thinking out loud here, we care about the one that's inside of the component. So I'm going to go over to the component. Oh my gosh, I misspelled component. All right, let's rename that. This is one time where I'm really glad that I'm not working with other people, because this could be very disturbing and destructive to everybody. But it will never, ever, 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 there will never be another moment where it's easier to do this than now. So let's go ahead and do it. You can see that it's having a real hard time compiling all of this, or transpiling all of this. Renaming components to components. And it is just really, really disturbed, this application. So I'm going to kill it. Let's go ahead and kill this. Let's deal with this components issue. There we go. Error not permitted to rename. Well, that's interesting. Rename. Components. I know, Rhett. I know. I love you too. So it's trying to rename it again. Let's see if we get another error. We might need to literally shut Visual Studio all the way down. Now, my personal experience shows that this is such a critical thing. Like, we had this whole flow going. We were trying to figure something out with why the whole application isn't working. Having this renamed is something that is like so important that it's worth stopping everything to rename it, and Visual Studio is having a hard time figuring that out. So I'm going to close the window, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start Visual Studio up again. Open. Let it start fresh. Go down here and fix our, well, it is fixed now. It is currently components. So we killed it like right in the middle of it, trying to do whatever it was trying to do. I'm gonna let it get all nice and squared away. It's like initialize. Oh, yeah, it's initializing Angular, activating extensions. Let's let it get through its whole thing before we restart, because stuff's about to break. Yep. TS config. Okay, I think it's done. Now we're gonna start this up. So basically we kind of short-circuited the IDE's attempt to fix everything for us. So I would think what will happen, yeah. So it's like um, it was trying to fix that for us, and for some reason that was just going wrong. So now we have to manually do it just because it just couldn't. Something, it was just freaking out. And we just have so many technologies just stacked on top of each other that it's very difficult to. Um, it's just extremely difficult to figure out why something like that failed. You know, that was just some sort of extreme edge case that the people who QA these things never tried out, or if they tried out, they couldn't duplicate. If they saw it, they couldn't duplicate it. It wouldn't surprise me, like if that whatever we videotape there might actually be very useful to people who care about that, who do that for a living, who maintain Visual Studio, or maybe people do it on like maybe it's people who do it for free, you know, open source. But anyways, that was definitely not how it should have worked. I'm definitely not super critical of them because that was an interesting thing. But here we are, inspect. I'm just curious if we come in here. Yeah, we still can't see anything inside of the canvas, which is a real bummer. That's really unfortunate. I know that there was a time when you could click on this and then you could see the children that were inside of there. But anyways, let's go to the console. So what I wanted to know was what the ID of the one that was inside of the components was. So TS, ST renderer, render child. Okay, so we create a visualization and then okay, here we go. Up here is where we get our renderer ID. I wonder if we say like here, console.log. Maybe it's here that we should put a console log where we render by ID in app. Start app render by ID plus this dot render ID, and then end. And I'm wondering if we can sort of, because it is a bit noisy because the one that we're reusing it, so it's hard to tell which version is the one we care about, is the ThreeJS data that we care about. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I think that's a little hard to read, so I'm going to go console. And this is kind of why it's so easy to accidentally put a console log into a commit that you don't want. You know, that you really don't want these console logs getting out to production. Okay, so number 8 is the one that we care about. And so we don't care about any of this. This is all noise that's coming from the app component. This is the one we care about. So ST renderer, and then rs3 end app render by the rs3 scene. So rendering service. We have our scene and our camera. So inside of our scene, we expect to see, I think last time we saw that the something seemed weird about the geometry. So, and yeah, so in the mesh, we have a mesh, and in that mesh, we have a position, which is 0, 0, which looks good. But we don't have a width or a height in our geometry, if I remember correctly yesterday. And if I remember from before, like its side of attributes is where it had the width or the height set. So if we come up here and we find like your scene. Okay, so we don't really use that render, I guess, in the app, because we never see this st render, or we don't see this like render rs3 scene. We don't see that anywhere, so we're not using that. So st render st service, and I guess that I feel like that's the problem, is that the object, the geometry doesn't have a width or a height. So let's go to our st geometry. And we do have a width and height. So now let's go to our our ThreeJS geometry and see if we use. So we never do that. So let's say set width and set height. And there's just so many things that can go wrong. I guess we want to set size. And we are going to get a ID, which is a number. And we're going to get one of those triplets. I'm just going to call it size. And that is st triple. And then we're going to say const geometry. And right now we only support 3 box geometries. And we're going to say equals this dot get geometry by ID. And we are going to get our ID. And we don't have to force it, so that's good. And then so we'll have to add like a lot of, we may end up having to add like logic in here that sort of decides what to do if it's something other than a box geometry, or maybe not, who knows. Maybe we'll handle that on the st side. We will find out though. On geometry, and then I don't know what it is, if it's like, I doubt it's called size. That's pretty cool that it has a to.json. I don't know. Let's go ask ChatGPT. We could figure it out, but like, it's so much faster just to ask ChatGPT. How do you set the width, height So they're saying, can you do it with an existing? Okay, let's ask. Can you update existing geometry? So it looks like you have to create a brand new one. So that's kind of a bummer. So that means that we actually will have to update the geometry. Um, Now, and that sort of leads us as like, and this, yeah, that's interesting. So that leads us to the thing is like, do we want to pass it in when we create, or do we want to update it? I think we want to update it as a general rule, because if that is going to be a problem, I want to run into that problem earlier rather than later. Um, so so what we want to do is actually something like this: new box geometry. And I don't think this is going to be a problem. And I'll explain why. And I talked about that a little earlier, but let's see. I think it should be called dimensions. X, dimensions. STY. I'm just going to put this on a new line. Comma. And I'm always amazed at how much, like how I just put that on a new line, how much drama an argument over that styling decision, like, can, like, absolutely cause everything just to go off kilter. Like, I mean, people can just battle about that. So now we're going to update the ID itself to our geometry. So we have to create a, to update the size. Now, hopefully there aren't too many things like this, because if there are, like, we might have to add a bunch of code that like says, okay, go get the old this and go get the old that and update, whatever. And that could be like really nasty. And I think that is one of the things that got pretty nasty. Maybe not in geometries. I can't remember. We actually didn't have any real issues updating geometries before. So, and then we're going to return the ID. Number. And I think I like, it's kind of like I'm sort of a natural rebel. And then I had a job that always forced you to put that on the next line, and I just hated being forced to put it on the next line. But then after I'd put it on the next line for a while, I actually started to like prefer the way that looked than having it on the same line. So yeah, we have a saying in the United States where they say, cut off your nose to spite your face. And like, yeah, it's easy to get to where like, oh, I don't like being told what to do, even if even what they're telling me is good for me. I don't want to do it. All right. So hopefully it's called dimensions in the ST side. So we're going to go to the ST camera geometry service. And when we create a geometry, we are going to see how we create the geometry. And then the next line is we're going to set the dimensions. Which this is a shame because, yeah, I made it a width height, and I really would rather that be a um, a triplet or a triple that has the width, height, and depth. No, actually, I don't. But I will. I would rather it be a triple over on that side, on the three side. But on this side, I actually like it being like this because different geometries, some may have a width but no height, or a width and a height but no depth, and stuff like that. And so as I shift in and out of these on this side, I don't want any of that. I don't want to have I like, let's say I go from a square to a cube. I want to be able to not have, I don't want to have to try to manage a triple on this side, but on that side for cubes it is a triple. But so maybe, I don't know, but we'll see. So const dimensions, which is an st triple, is equal to stx, which that would be the width. And I think that's probably like kind of a good, like in this side, on the st side, everything moving along the x is our width. Everything moving along the y is our height. Everything moving along the z is our depth. But it makes more sense to call it width, height, and depth on this side, but I think it makes more sense to call it x, y, and z on that side, I think. And this is very easy to sort of do that translation in your mind. Mind is that, oh, okay, yeah, that is. But I think that's the kind of thing that can like add one more layer of confusion on when you're trying to sort of think about code. And this may make total sense at this point, like to do it this way, and then like as we learn more as we get more deeper into things, it may not. And I think I should call that set dimensions. Dimensions. Like, I don't know how common this is. I know it's not like crazy uncommon, but for me, it is wild how I can like misspell things in the same paragraph 3 different ways. It's like my brain is so context driven that the context of everything I just wrote affects the way I spell it, which is a bizarre thing when you misspell the same thing. Okay, so we are setting the dimensions now. Now I did want to take a moment to talk about, like, if you look at the code in the ST side, what's happening is we're creating a geometry, right? And then right here, create geometry. And then we do this line and we set this thing, and then we create this, and we end up creating a whole brand new geometry again. Right? So that might seem very, very wasteful, but to me it's easier to sort of understand that, oh, okay, we're creating a geometry, oh, we're creating the dimensions, Okay, now we're setting the dimensions. Like that reads really clean to me, but but it seems like it would be very, very inefficient. But I'm 99.9% sure that at some layer, either in the transpiling layer at this point or in the JavaScript uh, compilation layer, where it compiles it to machine code, it sees that I do an assignment to a piece of memory, then I create another assignment to a piece of memory, and then I overwrite this assignment with with this new information, and I believe that it will optimize that completely away. That's my personal belief of what will happen. Um, Now, would that have happened in 1997? No. This would have been a lot more expensive. But now, I don't think it costs anything. And I think if it's easier to read and understand, then I think it's worth it. Because now I could say, I can even be like, create a geometry. Geometry. And then create a dimension. And then set the dimensions. And there is nothing wrong with the fact that this is not actually what's happening behind the scenes. It doesn't matter. It's just what matters is that we can understand what the code is doing. That's the important part, not the fact that it's what's happening technically. So somebody else can say, oh, okay, I need to set the dimensions. And it doesn't matter if behind the scenes. And the biggest reason it doesn't matter is because everything's tied to this geometry ID. It doesn't matter if there's a new object behind the scenes. That's another reason. So, and that was another reason why I created a geometry ID that we maintain that's tied to us, that we're using. So it doesn't matter what's happening behind the scenes. Now, what does matter is the freaking thing's still not drawing, and I was kind of hoping that once we set the dimensions, we would then have our information. We would have our stuff showing. Let's go to have our stuff showing. See. Environment. Background. Oh, we want the children, which is in our mesh. We have our mesh, and we want to look at our geometry. And I felt like it should have attributes. Because I could have sworn in our other geometry, scene service, ST scene service, in our app component, okay, so here's our app mesh that works. And our mesh is a 3. Well, actually, here's our geometry. See, when we create this geometry, we make it 0.7, 0.3, and 1. So I'm just going to console log the mesh, so it's a little bit more like log. And I'm going to put all caps working mesh plus, and I'm going to put a space there. And actually, I'm just going to put comma mesh. I'm going to save that. I'm going to see what our working mesh looks like. And it has, I was like, why don't we have children? And it's because, yeah, it is the there's our geometry. For some reason, I just couldn't see the geometry. So it has these groups. I don't feel like our other one has the groups. Let's see. Perspective scene. Children. Mesh. And geometry. See, our groups is empty on this one, but this groups is not empty, and it creates a new 3-box geometry, and it gives it 3 numbers, and that's what we're doing, right? Let's see, ST geometry service. We go to set dimensions. U3 box geometry. Return ID. Okay, so let me hit back and just make sure this is. And then I assign it after this. I say get geometry by ID, and then I get my 3 geometry. So I'm going to put a console log here. And then, okay. Final component geometry. So I'm guessing that our Amazon is delivering something. Geometry. Man, let's see what we got over here. Final component geometry. And so we have our 3 geometry right here. And C. Oh, wait. Was the groups the wrong? Maybe groups. Oh, no, that's our geometry. Yeah. And see, it has groups. But our. Over here, when we look at our scene. And we go to our geometry. We go into our children. And we go to our mesh. And we go to our geometry. It does not have any groups. So this version, which is this 3 geometry, which has a what? Oh, am I looking at the right thing? It has a width, height, has parameters, width, height, height, depth, and width. Is this final component geometry, which is weird to me because, oh no, they're set to 1. So this guy is all fleshed out. And he has a UUID that ends with 7B and starts with 59. And this has a whole different UUID. So I am losing my geometry. I wonder if it's the first geometry still. Right, because we end up creating a geometry here. And then we end up creating a whole new geometry there. Old geo. And I really want to get the UUID. So And this is just like very hard, right? This is hard. I just sort of want to just sort of dip into my happy place and just sort of heads down figure this out. Geometry by ID dot, and I think it's UUID. Yeah, I'm just curious if that one that it's using is the old one. Create base. I do old geo. That's what I want to see. Old geo starts F6, ends 1F. And if I go to my scene, geometry, go to children, mesh, and geometry. And its UUID is 3E92. So that's definitely not the right one either. Now let's look at my final component geometry. B248. Yeah, so that's not right either. So I don't know where it's getting this geometry from. Okay, so let's work our way up. Let's go to the mesh and see what it's doing. ST mesh, create a mesh, 3 mesh, ID. Oh, here's where it creates ST geometry, create base geometry. When I go to create base geometry, go to definition, I go in here, I create my base geometry, and I return a geometry ID, which should be in there. Then I say create a mesh, create mesh, go to definition, return ID. So I don't think there's anywhere where this, so it doesn't look like this ever uses, it never consumes any of these things, any of these things. So it seems like what I want to do, it seems like what I need to do is I need to pass that ST. Okay, yeah, so I never did connect the dots. So I guess it just created a default mesh. And then when it created the default mesh, it like created I guess a default geometry. I don't know how it got a geometry. I guess it does create default geometries. So like, okay, so what we have to think is, okay, how do we want to have the create mesh determine what its geometry and material are? And the easiest way would be to pass in the geometry and material. Or pass in the geometry and material ID. I don't know how I do it. Like, do I do anything like that for? I don't think. Well, so how does the scene get its geometry? Mesh, add mesh to scene. So here's where we add the mesh to the scene, but this mesh does not have in any of it. This mesh doesn't have any any geometry or material. Like all it did was create the base mesh, and it just got the one directly off of there. So that's like kind of hard to think through. So where would be the ideal place for the geometry and the material to get attached to the mesh? Like, is it at the scene level? Should the scene be the one that sort of handles that, or should it be at the mesh level? It seems like it should be at the mesh level. Now, the question is, should it be at the ST, on the ST side? Should that do all the coordinating, or should it be on the 3 side? And I think that should be on the ST side, and I'm not sure about that. I might end up regretting that, but it seems like over here is the thing that should say, hey, for this mesh, go ahead and add this geometry, and for this mesh, go ahead and add this material. So I guess the question mark is there, how would you add them? Like, can you just add a material? How do you set the geometry tree on an existing mesh? Okay, so apparently you can just say, no? Okay, so this you can just assign a geometry. How about a material? So like that's one of the things, like that's one of the things that you like, that is like sort of a secret sauce of Three.js is like sometimes you have to like destroy the whole object and create a new object, and sometimes you have to, that you could just attach an object. And that is unusual. Like in most APIs, they sort of do one or the other and they stay fairly consistent with that. But with Three.js, sometimes you can add things and sometimes you can't. And I'm sure like if I was, I'm not throwing shade at them. What I'm doing is just sort of trying to set my personal expectations when interacting with this API. They probably have reasons for doing what they're doing. I have never walked a single mile in their shoes. I do not know what they're dealing with on their sides. So I'm not going to criticize that. I'm just trying to absorb that. And I think this is something in my last application that like I would kind of fix. I would sort of dip into like another level of consciousness, sub-level of consciousness, figure out how to get it to work, and then drop back. But and then if I remember correctly, you don't really need this dispose thing for it to work, but maybe it's a good idea to do. Maybe the GPU doesn't sort of fix itself, but and you and other thing is this may not even be right. Sometimes ChatGPT is just wrong. Material on a mesh. So it looks like, yeah, adding and removing geometries and materials are very similar. So it looks like in the 3 side, on the 3 side, I'm going to want to add a like update mesh material, update mesh, update geometry. I don't really have to specify mesh because I'm in the mesh thing, and then send it, and then send it on that side. So let's go to the 3 side, and we'll just add 2 new functions on the 3 side. for on the meshes. So it's going to be like update mesh material. I don't need mesh. Well, I guess I've been doing that. Seems like a little redundant, but and we're going to say the ID and then which is a number. And then the material, which is a and I don't know what I think it might be a I think it was a basic material, but let's go to the app and double check. ST material, ST meshes. Oh, we don't even. So let's go back. Let's go to our interfaces and go look at the material and see what kind of material we support. Mesh normal material. In the future, we will support other kinds of materials, but for now, see, that was mesh basic material, and we have a mesh normal material, and we are going to return the ID, a number. ID. And so in this, and so this is a very, very good example of like a small variance that exists in ThreeJS, that a small disconnect, a different, slightly different way of them doing things on their side, that I don't really want that to add complexity on the ST side. I want to handle that sort of complexity on the 3 side of my code. And so now I'm on my 3 side, and I know I'm on the 3 side. And the only reason I know I'm on the 3 side is because there's no ST here. So, so first thing we want to do is get our mesh by ID. So, I mean get const mesh, and this is a 3 dot mesh. And it's whatever this is down here. Yeah. So equals this dot get mesh by ID and ID. And then once we have our mesh, we want to do this. We want to check to see if it has a material. And then we're going to dispose of it. Mesh dot material dot dispose. And I know I keep saying this. It does not like that. I feel like I remember something weird when we were trying to do this on the other, that last year's.
Hello.
All right, so this is saying that does not, oh. Oh, so I think what this is telling me is that it's possible that material is a array, or it could be a single material. So I think what we wanted to add is something like this. If mesh if array dot is array this dot material. I don't even know. I'm just sort of this mesh dot material. Oh my gosh, you are. Oh, mesh dot material. Know this material. Then we're gonna just iterate over it. We're just going to go to every one of them and dispose them. And we're going to call it mat. And I don't know. I don't know if we should strongly type that or not. Mat.dispose. And then else. So I guess you need to do that. It looks like it could be, according to the typings that whoever created this mesh material does not have to be a single material. It could also be an array of materials. And if it is an array of materials, then you need to iterate over each one and dispose of them. And if it's not an array of materials, if it's a single, then you can dispose of it. And TypeScript is smart enough to figure out that this code will work. So we'll see if it actually works too. I mean, we don't even know. So now we have our material, and we want to attach it. We've disposed of it, and now we want to take our mesh dot material equals material. And I don't know. I don't know if that's going to work, and I really do hope it works, because that was actually a lot of work. And I do want to point out that, like, we're doing something very, very different on the geometry side. On the geometry side, we're literally destroying the old geometry and creating a new geometry in its place. On the material side, we are destroying the old material references. So this dispose function apparently goes and finds all that's probably just to prevent a references to something that's not being used anymore. Which I don't even know if that's going to end up having a bad side effect of possibly, like, we might end up with some objects where suddenly their material that they were using gets destroyed. But maybe the dispose function is smart enough to see, well, is there anything else? You know, who knows? Like, all that's happening behind the scenes. There's no way to know what's happening except by, like, just digging into the ThreeJS API. And then maybe we will be able to figure it out, maybe we wouldn't. And I hope we don't have to go and do that. Hopefully this just works. If it doesn't just work, we could just not dispose of them and let ThreeJS try to figure that out. I don't know. So, and now we want to also do the same thing for geometries. So when we create a geometry, and when we change a geometry, we have to destroy the whole geometry. But when we want to update a geometry, we need to do something very similar to what we just did here. And then, like I said, we're all just going completely based on ThreeJS's advice here, which, you know, I don't know if you know this, but ThreeJS is sometimes just straight up wrong. So, and we're actually got quite a bit of code now that we're sort of completely we haven't even validated that it works. We're just sort of building it. Update. We're just validating. And this is just like sort of the dues you pay to understand a new domain. Const geometry. And this is also like the thing I really want to like kind of stress is that when we decide to add a new kind of mesh or a new kind of material or a new kind of geometry, like where that breaks is going to be extremely difficult to figure out unless we strongly type at this point. Like that, we have to strongly type at this point, or it would be almost impossible to figure out where things need to be updated. Um, so what I want to do is I want to go into my geometry and figure out what kind of geometries we support, which is 3-box geometry. And it's like these kinds of complications are just really, really, really hard to sort of explain. Like when management's like, oh, okay, well, what's the deal? Or you're talking to um, other developers and stuff, like trying to explain this sort of complexity is very difficult. Okay, so I don't. Oh, okay, so we want to do basically we want we want a reference to the mesh, the actual mesh, and then we want to say. So I guess what we need, we're gonna say if mesh geometry, and I don't know. It's weird that I guess it's not that weird that a mesh can have multiple. Okay, why is this? Okay, so it looks like it can only have one kind of geometry. So that's good. Or I mean, it's not a list of geometries, it's just a geometry. So then we can say mesh dot geometry dot. I just realized I say mesh and often gets ret kind of triggers her sometimes. So that's probably why she was just beeping like crazy a minute ago. Mesh geometry dispose. It'll be very interesting to see if that works. And then mesh dot geometry is equal to geometry. All right, and then we're going to return the ID. Oh, man. So now it's kind of hard in your brain, at least if you're like, for me, it's kind of hard to remember how we even got here. Like, what are we even trying to do? And I think what we were trying to do is we wanted in the scene itself, in the ST scene, we wanted to no, yeah, in the ST scene or in the ST. Was it the ST scene service or the mesh service? One of those services we want to update the geometry. I think it makes sense, I guess, to put it in the. So here's where we create our mesh. We get the mesh ID and we add it to the directory. But we want to set the geometry and we want to set the geometry and we want to set the material on our mesh here, I think. We have the ID, so we can get the. Okay, so basically we need to get, and I think we want to get the actual. The actual mesh, the 3 mesh. So the geometry. which is a 3 dot. Oh, you suck. Did I not import 3? I had to have imported 3. That's wild that we didn't need to import 3 yet. Where I'm really struggling right now is like, should the 3 side of the mesh, should that doppelganger be the one that interacts, that gets the actual mesh from 3, or should the ST side? I think the ST side. I might end up regretting that, but so import, and this has become just so easy for me. Star as 3 from like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, like that was just like, how would anybody be able to remember that? And now it's just like, how can people not remember that? And then box geometry is equal to this dot, and I bet you I don't have the I think I should go straight to the 3 service. So I have mesh service, but I want the 3 service. So private. Oh, this is where like your sort of insecurities will start to show. Geometry, like you're like, oh man, am I creating some big mess right now? Don't know. We're gonna find out. Tree service equals inject, and I just can't imagine that I'm not getting the right geometry service. I'll take a look here in a second. You know, since it just did the auto import for me. So it did do the auto import for me. I think I would rather it put it at the bottom, which I think does make sense. I understand why it did it, but that is not what I want. And I kind of want to separate my 3 ones from my ST ones. So basically what I have is my utility. I have my stuff from Angular. I have my utilities. I have my 3 services, and then I have my ST services. And I might end up regretting that. 3 geometry service, and I misspelled it. And I hope to heck that I didn't misspell it. So it's just here. Get geometry by ID. So I'm going to ask for the ID, and I have it on my ST mesh, and it's called ST geometry ID. So it really is the same ID. This is my ID. This is not ThreeJS's ID. And then I want to do this dot mesh service and dot update mesh geometry, and I want to send it the geometry's ID, so that could get, oh, I'm sorry, the mesh's ID. That could get confusing. And the geometry. And then let's come back over here, hit save, and see if we see anything. And see if anything breaks. Oh my God. Oh my God. Woo hoo. We got a little box, guys. We got a little box. I just, it's hard to even like tell you the how good that feels. Okay, so and it's easy to explain why it's a white box, and that's because we haven't updated the material. So theoretically, we can go do almost the exact same thing, but for materials. Now, I will say that I am not 100% sure that like I want this to interact this way. Like, do I want this to interact, go straight from like, do I want to kind of control the flow of communication from the ST mesh can only talk to 3 mesh, but 3 mesh can talk to 3 service, or do I want to allow everyone, like the 3 service could talk to the all the various 3 services can talk to each other, all the various mesh services, ST services can talk to each other, and they can all talk across. I don't know if it's worth like how much structure I want in that sort of communication. Right now, basically what I have is the mesh ST mesh service can talk to the 3 geometry service, which I think is fine, but I'm not 100% sure. And if I do come to the conclusion that it's a bad idea, I definitely want to fix that. The sooner I can fix it, the better. Today would be the best, but I don't know if that's what I want. So I can't fix it right now. But it would be best if I could fix it, to fix it today if I thought that was a problem. I just don't know if it's a problem. And that is a major issue in software development. A lot of times architects will fix problems that never ever become problems, but add complexity to the system. So now I'm going to say this dot material source. I have some confidence that this is going to work, but nope. See, I don't have my material service injected yet, so I'll need to do that over here. And actually, just for my own, like, 3 services. ST services. It feels like if I'm going to have I guess I should have my services sort of together. Now, I probably won't do this all the time, but I just feel like it's like sort of like if you ever read the book Sherlock Holmes, he talks about like sort of setting his brain up in such a way, like he controls how he sets his brain up. I think all I'm doing right now is just controlling how I set my brain up. It's not something I think I need to do all the time, but I think I do need to do it at first to get things working. And then I've definitely seen people argue to the end of time about whether the constructor should be there or if there's nothing in there. Like I have no idea why people get worked up by stuff like that, but they do, and I don't know. Maybe they have a point. I don't think so, though. All right, so now I want to get I guess from a hierarchical perspective, I want. And I didn't used to care about hierarchy like much, but since I started working in legislation, like the House always wants to be first because they're like, we are the people's chamber. So they always want to be first on everything before the Senate. That they are very aggressive about that, and that sort of has planted that concept of okay. But like hierarchy, setting things up in order matters, consistency, that type of thing. And I don't even want an ST. It is weird. Do I need the ST material service? I bet you I don't even need that. Okay, I do. And then this one happens to be the mesh service. So private, and then material service. No, not material service. Yeah, material service. And then I can't even tell you. It is hard for me to express how amazing it feels to have this little square there. It's just hard to believe. And I have worked with other people where we've spent like 5 hours trying to get something like that to happen, just to get it to work. And like, it is crazy how much you bond when you go through something like that with somebody. You just get this massive bonding experience, which can be really awkward because like it can end up being like very. It's kind of like if you get really really drunk with somebody, and then you guys just connect at a low level, and you just tell all these secrets about yourselves and all that, and then like the next day you're just like, oh shit, I just really spoke about some stuff that I didn't want. Like, I've been through this where we were like had actual experiences where we were like, oh man, I don't know if we should have. But it's never worked out too badly in either case, having gotten really drunk with someone or having gotten had like sort of an emotional connection on something like this. But constant material, and then 3 dot and this was like a mesh normal material, I think. Mesh normal material equals this dot material service, get material by ID, and then we're going to get that from our ST mesh dot ST material ID, and then this dot. I guess the reason it's so like feels really really good to get something like that to work is because like there really was no guarantee that was going to work. Like when this wasn't working, there was a ton of reasons it wasn't working. The camera thing was still a real thing, like, and all of that. So mesh ID, common material. Now, hopefully, what I would hope will happen is we'll get either that color or whatever the color is behind there. But one of these edge colors is what I'm thinking we'll see. One of these colors, material. Okay, so I feel like this is a good time to do a commit. But before we can commit, we need to remove all the console logs, any code that we don't want, and we need to get unit tests working, and we need to get end-to-end tests. Probably need to update the end-to-end tests to look at this thing here. Do a commit, then get animations working, do a commit, delete this thing, do a commit, then get it to where we have 3 little dots up here where you can add these and get rid of this guy being just automatically in there. Do a commit. And before every commit, update end-to-end tests, because once we delete this, the end-to-end test should break. And then it would be really nice, and then if our end-to-end tests can just start adding these things. And then maybe as the last bonus piece, be able to like this be a random like have some randomizations to these things. Like it's sometimes it's a cube, sometimes it's a different materials, not different materials, but different geometries, different sizes, different things. Like I think that would be really nice, just so that we can create like a cool end-to-end video. And maybe if I do that, I'll actually make a video where I just sort of highlight Cypress and how great Cypress is, and all that. Although I've been watching like Angular videos, and it looks like they are deprecating, or maybe have deprecated, Jasmine Karma. And not only have they deprecated it, but they've done like kind of the ultimate douchebag move, and that they haven't said what they're going to replace it with. So we don't even know what to go to. They're just like, yeah, like all you people that have put massive effort into the unit tests, yeah, you wasted your time. Now, the only reason I would say that you wasted your time, which is me, um, is because like the people at Angular, like I used to work at this place when I worked at Boeing. Sometimes they would say like, hey, how hard would it be to do this? And you're like, oh man, it's going to be really hard, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then they're like, don't worry about it. Don't do that. Like whenever they did that, you better start working your butt off on doing whatever it is they just said, because it's coming. Like whatever they asked that about, that request was coming. I think the same goes with Angular. When they say, hey, we're deprecating something, we're not sure what it's going to be replaced with, but we're definitely going to support the old one. No, they're not going to support it. It's going away. Sooner or later, it's going to go from deprecated to like, well, we support it, but we strongly advise against it, to like, yeah, we don't support it anymore, and we cannot even conceive of why you guys ever did it that way. You guys are idiots. Yeah, like they literally get like very, very hostile and judgy about things like that. So, unfortunately, I'm in a place where like I think Karma, I don't, there's like no way to know what they're gonna move to. So, I kind of have to keep doing Karma Jasma until they say which one they are going to support. And even when they say it, until they actually like build in support for that, and they're kind of still supporting, then you have to like move over to the new thing. And then the other problem is the new thing may not even be fully fleshed out, like with like code coverage and all the cool stuff that Karma Jasmine has. So yeah, it's just like, man, change hurts. Change is painful, and the longer you wait to make the change, the harder things get. But anyways, I feel real good about this. Yeah, I'm really glad that I'm to the like at least I can now do everything. I can do what I need to do, from end to end, with all this stuff, all this code sort of separated out. And yeah, that's awesome. I know it's probably a long ass video, hour and 29 minutes long. Yeah, but it had to get done. The only other option I really had was, well, obviously, like if you're watching this video and you're at an hour and 29 minutes, like you wanted to watch it. No one forced you to watch this for an hour and 29 minutes. Um, you probably, I hope, if you're anything like me, you pay attention to how long videos are, and you sort of have a gauge of if what a video is going to be like based on how long it is. Um, so I would assume that you knew that I was either going to ramble on about some other side thing, or that I was going to be like, you know, coding in a very like non-productive, non-linear way, that I was going to be like trying really hard to get shit to work and all that. And so I feel like it was important for me to capture that. I will probably watch this video in the future when I'm trying to understand what sort of those last stages of like bringing it all together. Because, I do have to do that. Like that is something that I have to do usually a couple times a month. And I've never really been able to be conscious for the whole thing. I've always had to dip into sort of a primal lower level thinking. So kind of working through it in a conscious way. And I think I still, even during this, even though I was talking and everything during it, I still sort of dipped. And it would be interesting. It'll probably be very interesting to me to see, like, when I dipped and what I acted like and what I was like while I was sort of in that conscious, subconscious mode. But I mean, that's just the reality of coding. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you know, I know that anytime I watch the Angular videos and someone that makes videos, um, like if they're live streaming and then like somebody that makes videos um, makes a comment, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, man, we watched your videos, and man, thank you so much for making videos of high production value." And like literally, the whole point of this is to be low production. I don't want to hide anything from anybody. I don't want to like obscure what I'm doing to get things working um, away through production. Like this is supposed to be raw. That's the whole point. And um, if you want like high production videos, there's a lot of them out there. Now, I guess I have to admit that there aren't any. I don't know of any high production videos that show Angular and ThreeJS. And so like if you're just having to like you just want to know how to update a geometry or update a mesh or update a material or update a yeah, I was going to say geometry. Uh, like if you just wanted to understand that and you had to like freaking sit through an hour and a half of me just sort of rambling aimlessly, yeah, it would be kind of cool. Like if there was someone that says, "Hey guys, this is how you this is how you update a mesh on something, and you can't really do it, da, 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 and and this is how it's done." Blah blah blah. End. 3 minute video. This is exactly how it's done. Blah 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 blah. If there that doesn't exist, but like, you know, I think you kind of someone has to build out like the raw videos first, and then other people can find that they kind of wade through those raw videos and then create um, shiny finished production value videos that will get you to your answer. Because I feel like any video that is like sort of longer than shorter, like if it's like if it if you want something that's just going to give you an answer, you're going to get it. If it's longer than 5 minutes, it's going to be a waste of your time. And then if it's like longer than 5 minutes but shorter than maybe 15 minutes, it's probably really going to suck. I generally do not watch videos like that. Either I'm looking for a long term, like a deep understanding of something, so it's going to take them a while to sort of dig through all the little minutia of it, or conversely, it's going to be like really short, like they know exactly what they're trying to teach you and they're going to pop it out. Anything in the middle there, I find to be a waste. So, happy coding, everybody. We got this thing. We got our square. It's taken forever, taking so much longer than I was expecting. But I was hoping we wouldn't still be working on this sort of thing at the end of March. So we're way before the end of March. So I'm happy about that. But we are going to grind through. It's probably going to take a good bit of time to get the unit tests working, and it's going to take a good bit of time. Well, the end to end shouldn't be too bad. Happy coding, everybody. Bye.